Good morning once again, and welcome to the next in our Bible studies. Today we are still in the section of the Bible where we're looking at disaster stories and natural wonders and the way that the biblical writers dealt with them and understood them. And today we're continuing with the saga of Noah, and particularly today to the end of that story from Genesis chapter 9, verses 8 to 17. And this is the story of the Rainbow Covenant. God said to Noah and his sons, "Right now I am making a treaty between myself, you, and your descendants. It also applies to all living things, all birds, all animals, and everything that came out of the ark with you. By these words, I am making a promise to you all. I promise that never again will everything that lives be annihilated by a flood. Never again will a flood destroy the world. As a sign of this everlasting covenant agreement, which I am now making with you and with all living things, I am putting my rainbow in the clouds. It will be the visible evidence of my covenant with the world. Whenever I cover the sky with clouds and the rainbow appears, I will remember my promise to you and to all the creatures, that a flood will never again kill all living things. When the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it, and I will remember the everlasting covenant between me and all living things on earth. That is the token of the promise I now make to all living beings." Treaties, or written peace deals, were of course known in the ancient world. Powerful nations like Egypt and Babylon used such agreements as a kind of binding promise, as nations do also in the modern world, to establish relationships and to bring a degree of stability and freedom from fear to those who make them. Less usual are treaties between gods and humans. And the idea that a nation or a group of believers could have such a treaty with God is a distinctive feature of Judaism and Christianity. Islam relies more upon the concept of submission, and the Quran mentions the covenant largely to point out that the Jews had not lived up to their role, to their side of the agreement. Early on in Jewish history, there had been a number of attempts at establishing a covenant between God and humans. The covenant with Abraham, which established him as the founder of a worldwide family of faith, would have been known to our writer, as would the covenant with Moses, which brought freedom to his people and the rule of God's law. Other covenants followed, notably the covenant with the tribe of Aaron, which established the hereditary priesthood, and the covenant with King David, which established the royal house. So, when our writer came back from the Babylonian exile, it was at a time for re-establishing a covenant relationship with God. The people who returned to Jerusalem had been moved to tears with the ancient scriptures when they were read to them. In Nehemiah chapter 8, we can see that story. So, alongside the rebuilding of their dwellings and the temple, there was also talk of rebuilding the nation's covenant with God. It comes then as no surprise that in this story, which had at last come to be put into writing, Noah is on the receiving end of such a proposal. Noah's covenant differs from the others in a number of ways. First of all, it is an unconditional offer from God, whilst all other covenants put the people under certain obligations. And then it is unlimited in its scope. It is a covenant with all living things, and not with the nation or a smaller group of people within the nation. Being in exile had broadened the horizons of those who had been away, and the world was a bigger place than it used to be. We might find solace in the idea that God made a covenant with the whole world, and that God's side of the agreement is that he will not destroy his creation, his new creation. The rainbow remains a sign of that covenant. Our side of the agreement now in the 21st century is, of course, the same. Although God has promised not to destroy the world again, sadly, we have it within our power to destroy it for ourselves. We must agree not to despoil the earth, but to use its resources with care, sharing them with one another and saving them for future generations. And so we say farewell to this ancient apocalypse. And in the next 2 weeks, we will look at some other biblical disasters that might have messages for us. And tomorrow we look at the problem of why humans don't understand one another. That'll be day 13. See you then.